And so, God, I just pray you bless them, God. Work a mighty work, Lord, in this city. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Thank you very much.
Okay. We're now going to go into our community spirit presentations. Two pretty nice people that are going to get this award tonight. Kevin, I'd like to call upon you to present the award. Please.
I got married at Turning Point 32 years ago. I can't believe that. That was a long time ago. The wheel wasn't invented. Can I call up John and Joanne? So I'm going to fuss over some really nice people. Well, first I'm going to talk about them individually. First I'm going to talk about John. John, he is the nicest, quietest, calmest person I've ever met. Soft-spoken. And he's one of these types of guys that when he says, "How are you?" he actually means it. Joanne, on the other hand, will tell you exactly what she thinks in a good way. But what's most remarkable about these two people, and I mean, there's probably not an organization in the town of Norco that these two have not touched. And what is unique about them is most people don't even know who they are. They like it like that. But they do everything. They are the critical component to all volunteer organizations. Completely selfless, will do anything you ask them to do. They will stand out in 110-degree heat, parking cars. They will man booths. They will count money. They will check you off as you walk into fair or horse week. They will make sure the beer gets delivered. They will transport somebody who can't walk. They will do anything and everything for you. They're remarkable people. And so it's a great honor to present you with this. This is the Spirit of Norco Award, and just thank you so much for what you do to the community. We really appreciate it. You know what? These are your people, so come over here. Oh. He's going to make me a liar.
Okay, the one thing I want to say is there's a lot of our friends here, but you guys are lifetime friends. We've met a lot of people in this town since 1991 when we moved here, and it's an awesome community, and the people that live here are awesome. So I really appreciate all your support too, very much.
Thank you all. Thank you, Council.
You can pull it down, Joanne.
Oh, put it down? Yeah. Okay. All I want to say is in the 30 years that we've been volunteering without thought of any kind of accolades or attention to ourselves, it's because this community is so worth it, and it is so worth preserving, and this is why we volunteer, and with the good Lord's help, we're going to hang around as long as we can and keep volunteering. So thank you all very much. Very kind.
Thank you, Kevin. Congratulations again, John, Joanne. Good job. Okay, City Council reports on regional boards. We'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Grunmeyer.
So January 13th, we had our unload meeting. We are planning a youth town hall event. It will be April 21st at Norco High School in the Performing Arts Center. And we're going to kind of take a multi-pronged approach for this event. We're going to be talking with the students about fentanyl, which is a huge issue right now, so scary. And then we're going to be talking about driving under the influence, again, alcohol, drugs, those types of items. And then just awareness with social media and some of the hazards that go along with that. We're working on having a meal for the students at this event. We'll have hopefully one of the smashed up MAD cars there as well on display, and some interactive activities for them as well. So we're looking forward to a really good event. If you'd like to help give some donations for prizes or door prizes for the students, we'd certainly appreciate that. But again, we're looking to inform our young people with current and appropriate information on these topics. And then I also attended the Cal Cities Riverside meeting, but a couple of my colleagues were there as well, so I'll let them speak on that.
Catherine?
Yes. I also attended the Cal Cities Riverside County General Membership Meeting, and one of the big things that came out of that was the revised rule for some of the funds that the city received through the American Rescue Act. So that will be great as we look forward to next year and to setting our budget.
I attended a whole bunch of stuff, and but I also attended the Cal Cities meeting. And one of the things I went there that I wanted to really find out about is the idea that there's a ballot initiative to strip the state legislature of their ability to rezone, to take away the ability of a local community to zone their own communities. I don't know where that is. They didn't talk enough about it, so I was a little bit disappointed by that. The other thing that I met with Supervisor Spiegel and the Norco College folks about another access point, and I was really pleased that she held the meeting, but she said there's really no way that you're going to be able to open that college up to another road, another access road. I had a meeting today that we're going to have to put into closed session about WRCOG. So there was no time to do it today, so we'll have to put it into the next meeting, or what I'll do is I'll talk to Andy and he'll disperse the information. Other than that, I have nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Ted?
I didn't go to the Cal meetings. I went to the Veterans Memorial meeting, and we're getting closer to getting the granite rock up there for the Gold Star Family Monument. As they say, it's being etched in stone right now in Tennessee, and then we'll have to figure out how to get it here. But hopefully the monument will be here first part of February, and then we'll have a ceremony up there just so everybody can see it. The rest, and I will, real quick, because I know we went over the Riverside County Transportation Commission meeting. I would strongly recommend that you check the flyers put out by them on the closure of the 9115 this weekend. Don't be surprised if you can't go through there in the evening, because they're going to shut it down. So please, if you're not aware of it, I know we put it on our city website, and so that make sure you're aware of it, or go on the Riverside County Transportation Commission website. It's on there. Like I said, they're going to shut the freeways down in there for this weekend. So get your times in there. Also, Riverside Transit Agency, please if you take the bus, just be aware. The COVID hit them hard as far as their drivers go. They're trying to make as many of the routes up and running as they can on overtime and the limited staff, but just be patient. They're trying to get as many as they can. It hit their agency too, and their drivers, because of their always out in the public. And then interesting thing, part of that is the T-Now meeting the next day. We're going to really strive to work on our route here. And Bus Route 4 comes through Norco, but we want to work on our western end, and this involves, the T-now involves the cities of Rupa Valley, Corona, Norco, Eastvale, and our area here all the way down to Wildemore, as trying to get more involved in getting the routes, especially the dial-a-ride up and running for in our area. So we're working on that. Real quick, out of the Western Community Energy meeting, we're wrapping that up as we can. So I'll be able to report out better next time, so that we can let you know. But it's almost coming to an end for us, and SCE should be taking over completely. As far as if you have any issues with that on your changeover and your billing or stuff like that, that should come up, and everything should be done, I would hope, in 4 to 6 months. So please, if you have an issue with it, contact Southern California Edison at this point. They have almost the full control on those changeovers. So, and then that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. One thing to add, this morning I attended the regional monthly mayor's meeting. We had a presentation on the governor's budget with a lot of details still to come. Quite eye-opening, and I would say be prepared. But still a long way to go on that. This is just preliminary, and the budget will be forwarded in July. I attended the special board directors meeting for the Chino Basin Desalter Authority, and I just wanted to give you one project summary update that if you've seen over the years, the South Archibald Plume project that we've had going on since the original cleanup and abatement order from 2016. That project now is complete. It consisted of 3 monitoring wells, production well 12-2. I'm sorry, production well 2-12 is complete, and the raw transmission pipeline. All that work is now complete, and so that's a major milestone in the past. Hopefully now, and the project estimate on that and cost was $30.1 million. So we're finished with that. I'd like to move into consent calendar items, and I'll call on the city clerk.
All items listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine and may be enacted by one motion. Prior to the motion, to consider any action by the presiding governmental body, and public comments on any of the consent items will be heard. There will be no separate action unless members of the governmental body or the audience request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar. Items removed from the consent calendar will be separately considered under item 3 of the agenda.
Thank you, Dana. Does council, do we have any items to be pulled? Seeing none. Dana, are there any public comments?
I have no public comments for these items.
Thank
Motion
you.
to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move into public comments. I'll call upon the city clerk, please.
This is the time when persons wishing to address the presiding governmental body regarding matters not on the agenda may be heard. Please submit a speaker card to the meeting clerk. Please limit comments to 3 minutes or less. The Ralph M. Brown Act limits the governmental body's ability to respond to comments on non-agendized matters at the time such comments are made. The governmental body shall not discuss or act relative to any general public comment. We have one speaker card. Bill Naylor.
Good evening, Bill. How are you?
Council and Mayor. I'm kind of surprised that I'm the only one here to speak because I was asked by some of the residents to come and talk in addition to their voices, but since they're not here, I'll at least mention their concern again. I want to first of all thank the city for getting all the new trail fencing going, and I appreciate that they're finally getting it working on a lot of different streets, and we've really noticed it. It's really good to see that done. Regarding that, though, back some time ago, we had asked for River Drive to have trail fencing done and also to look at the possibility of having some parking along there for people that come in with rigs, especially from out of the area. I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe that it was discussed that it would be coming before the Streets and Trails Commission and the Parks and Recreation Commission to talk about how to put that fencing and make it so that there might be something, although I know that we do get a lot of residents along there that are really been concerned about homeless parking and things like that. So I understand, but I think we really have never had a full discussion on this at any of the meetings. I know we haven't had it at Parks and Recreation. And since the city's park is down below the riverbed there, it would have been helpful to have access to that. And then one resident that did talk, maybe a month ago, about issues on River Drive there between, right there, I guess he was at River Drive and Center, with the drain there and such, and talking about the trail moving to the south side of the street instead of all staying on the north side of the street. I'm kind of in concurrence with him that it stay on the north side, if at all possible. I just thought I would, again, let you know that a number of us do ride that area, and we really don't like crisscrossing streets if we can avoid it. And again, I thought he was going to be here with several of his neighbors, but I guess he's decided he could not do it or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. I'll ask our Public Works Director to reach out to you and bring you up to speed on some of those issues, okay? And some of the recommendations from Streets and Trails.
There's no further public comment, Mayor.
Thank you, City Clerk. We'll now move into number 5, legislative matters. And once again, Dana, I'll call on you.
No new evidence will be heard from the public as the public hearing has been closed regarding items listed.
Thank you. This is item 5A, ordinance number 1078, second reading. And a recommendation. Okay, I'll make a recommendation to adopt ordinance 1078, second reading, approving zone amendment 2021-04.
Second.
Please vote.
Not if it got read on the first read.
Okay.
Motion passes unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along, we'll move into public hearings.
Order of presentation for public hearing items. Number 1, staff report presentation. 2, council questions of staff. 3, open public hearing with public comment. 4, closed public hearing. 5, council discussion and action.
Okay, thank you. This is item 6A, approval of the self-evaluation and transition plan for facilities, programs, services regarding compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Andy?
Yes, I will be handling that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Michelle is out sick today. Yeah, this is a report on the city's self-evaluation and transition plan regarding compliance with Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA. This plan was previously discussed by the ADA facilities.
Get your mic on.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
It's on. This item was previously discussed by the ADA facilities and program consultants at the City Council meeting on December 1. The report and transition plan, they identify action plans that the city needs to take to remedy identified ADA deficiencies with facilities, programs, and communications. The policy decision that is before the City Council tonight is to approve resolution number 2022-06 to show that we have approved plan and to allow staff to begin implementation of the action plans. In trying to implement these action plans, I think it's important to note that some of the items will come back to the City Council either as part of our CIP process or for funding decisions as part of the operating budget. The priorities that have been identified here, they are simply tentative, but merely that. It is a process that staff will be handling in a logical manner to ensure that this can be implemented. And we are not here tonight to set definite priorities for those action plans. Kathy Oswald, who is the facility consultant, and David Sanfilippo, who is a program and communications sub-consultants, they are here tonight, and they can add additional comments and or answer questions that you might have. With that, I complete my comments and turn it over to Kathy and her team if she has any additional comments to provide.
Good evening.
We also have Greg Izor, who is the gentleman who did the CASP inspections at each facility, and we're here to answer any questions that you may have.
Great. Good to see you all again. Are there any questions for staff? Council, have any questions for staff? Go ahead, Robin.
I just had one question. There were a couple of times in the plan it talked about working with Norco College or CNUSD for like Braille, large print, some of that. Has any primary contact been done with those organizations, or is that just a recommendation and then city staff would follow up with making those contacts?
The anticipation was that city staff would.
Okay.
That I had, and he said he had president there.
Right. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Andy, Michelle could pick up on that, correct?
No, it's not
Yeah.
legal. Make those contacts.
Great.
Those are not difficult.
Okay.
We have,
Ted, any questions?
You know, I talked to Michelle earlier before she went to her doctor's appointment, but she answered quite a bit of my questions, but I'll reserve after the rest of council asks questions before we make our final vote on this for another statement. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Catherine? Kevin?
Nope.
Okay. Go ahead and open the public hearing.
We have no public comments, Mayor.
Thank you, Dana. Close the public hearing. Bring it back to council discussion and action. Ted?
Yeah, just a discussion and look into the book. And Andy, I know you said we're not going to nitpick it. I'm concerned, and I want the public to understand on this part of it. It's like my questions. We have made quite a few improvements to our ADA, to our park, and our facilities. And the people here will tell you that it's fluid. It changes as it goes through. And things that we bought and we thought we were all in compliance, some of those new bathrooms, stuff like that, we find out, whoops, they're not. It's minor, but it's not all ADA compliant. And that's the one thing about this document and what's going on is that these will be changes as we progress through. And the biggest thing, and I don't want people to understand it, this reduces some of our liability because we have a plan. Many of you have gone to other cities, and I was at a neighboring city over the weekend watching my grandson play ball, and I can tell you those people there are going, that city's in a world of hurt if they think they're in compliance. But as I look through this is a good thing as we look to improve our facilities. But just because we had a bathroom and it was just put in the place 3 years ago, things have changed, and I know, so just understand it. the laws are changing. So, and with that, if no one else has discussion, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Just one moment on that. I'd certainly like to thank staff and our consultants. I appreciate the magnitude of this project and how you presented us to it over time. Thank you so much.
Under discussion.
Yeah, go ahead, Catherine.
To acknowledge we have definitely made progress. Looking at the report that was very detailed, I appreciate that. There are some areas that still need improvements for accessibilities, and it really brought to attention some of the things that I hadn't thought about before because I hadn't gone in with the lens of looking, is this accessible for all of our residents? And so I'm really looking forward to some of the items that aren't big ticket items, things like alternating the striping on the stairs, or making sure that the automatic closers are the right pressure so that anyone could get in or out of a restroom, that those things that are easy for us to fix, that we'll be able to do those. So as much as we can make our parks accessible for everybody and our facilities accessible, that we're able to make progress on some of these parks that might say it's not going to get done for 15 years, but there are some small things that we'll be able to get done before then that can make a big difference for our residents. And so I'm very glad to see that. So thank you.
Thank you. Dana, we have a motion and a second.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to item 6B. This is adoption of the Temescal Basin Groundwater GSP. Chad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
This item came about, started in 2014 when the governor signed the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, which basically required any unadjudicated or unmanaged groundwater basins to develop what they want is basically a groundwater sustainable agency to overlook it, whether it's an individual agency or multiple agencies that take water from those groundwater basins that aren't actively managed and maintained, to ensure, and this is all part of the trying to make sure that all the basins are drought resistant, that they have resources as they're taking water out, they're putting water back in, and if they don't really have that ability, at least developing a plan of how they're going to manage the basins when there's drought, when there's a shortage of water, etc., to show that there's a responsible agency or agencies that manage those basins. The city of Norco's boundaries are in the Temescal Basin. We are also partially in the Chino Basin. The Chino Basin is already an adjudicated managed basin. We have water rights. We're a member agency of that. So that basin currently does not have the requirement to create a groundwater sustainable plan, but the Temescal Basin does not have one. We currently don't produce any water from the Temescal Basin. All our wells that we have on the west side of town, the southerly part of town, are all in the Chino Basin sub-basin. Mm-hmm. So we're actually not pumping any water out of the Temescal Basin. We honestly don't have any plans to do so because in most of the areas where we could, we hit granite. It's only shallow groundwater, which has contamination issues. But because we are an entity in our sphere of influence, and our city boundaries are in the Temescal Basin, we still wanted to participate in this process, such that if sometime we did, by some chance, did it, we were part of that process. But because of that, primarily the city of Corona produces most of their water out of the Temescal Basin, or a good portion of it. So they took the lead in developing this GSA to say, and basically it's between Corona, the Home Gardens County Water District, and the city of Norco. We developed an MOU a few years ago that basically agreed that we'd participate in this process, but Corona was willing to fund it because they recognize they're really the main entity. Even Home Gardens doesn't produce any water. So at this point, it doesn't directly impact us other than we are participants and will continue to be participants. But even going forward, they will bear the full financial burden of the annual reports, the quarterly reports, any reporting that has to be done, any sampling that has to be done. They've accepted that and volunteered to do that and not ask the other entities to fund that when they recognize we're not directly contributing to the taking water out or even putting water in, for that matter. But we did want to give a brief presentation on this plan that Corona has put together. So I have here today Melissa Estrada Maravilla from the City of Corona and Chad Taylor from Todd Groundwater that will make a brief presentation to you. You have that presentation, I believe, in front of you, and we'll review that right now. And then afterwards, we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you. Good evening.
Hi.
Hi.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I am Melissa Estrada Maravilla, and I'm happy to be here presenting on the Temescal Basin Groundwater Sustainability Plan for formal adoption. So the Temescal Basin Groundwater Sustainability Plan was created by the Temescal Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency with input from the local community that essentially works as a roadmap for how the Temescal Basin will reach and maintain long-term sustainability. This map shows the Temescal Basin, which was classified as a medium priority basin by the Department of Water Resources. As a medium priority basin, the Groundwater Sustainability Plan is due to DWR by January 31st, 2022. The Temescal Basin GSP has been a few years in the making. The process began when SGMA was signed into law on September 16, 2014. The Sustainable Groundwater Management, SGMA, empowers local agencies to adopt groundwater management plans that are tailored to the resources and needs of their local communities. SGMA enables eligible local agencies to form groundwater sustainability agencies, GSAs, develop groundwater sustainability plans for designated basins in their jurisdiction, and achieve groundwater sustainability within 20 years of GSP implementation. A Memorandum of Understanding, an MOU.
Far?
Yeah, too far.
Backwards, sorry.
Please. Thank you. A Memorandum of Understanding, an MOU, was executed in March 2017 between the City of Corona, the City of Norco, and the Home Gardens County Water District, leading to the formation of the Temescal GSA. The Temescal Basin GSP was developed jointly among the three agencies. Through the established MOU, the City of Corona accepted the responsibility to lead the effort in developing a GSP for the Temescal Basin. The City of Norco was awarded funding through DWR's Sustainable Groundwater Management Funds for planning money to develop this GSP. The City of Corona issued a request for proposals in November 2019. The City of Corona awarded the RFP to Todd Groundwater, who helped us develop a successful Temescal Basin GSP. Chad Taylor from Todd Groundwater is here today to help answer any questions that might arise. The creation of the Temescal Basin GSP was an all-inclusive process. The Temescal GSA understands local stakeholder input is critical in identifying and maintaining long-term groundwater sustainability, and developed a website on which meeting notes, available drafts, timelines, and contact info is provided and updated as needed. The website is accessible at any time. The Temescal GSA worked with local stakeholders to develop the Temescal Basin Groundwater Sustainability Plan. It held 4 TAC meetings, provided 3 public workshops, and met with community leaders on 2 separate meetings to solicit stakeholder input. All meetings and workshops were held virtually via Zoom due to the COVID-19 restrictions. The 3 public workshops were open to anyone who wished to attend. All 3 were simultaneously translated into Spanish to receive as much public input as possible. A 90-day public comment period was held from September 15th, 2021 through December 14th, 2021. So, the Temescal Basin has been managed without significant undesirable results. The sustainability criteria are defined to avoid future undesirable results. The Temescal Basin developed quantitative sustainability criteria for all applicable sustainability indicators that allows the Temescal Basin GSA to define, measure, and track the progress of sustainable management in the Temescal Basin. The sustainability goal is to sustain groundwater resources for the current and future beneficial uses of the basin in a manner that is adaptive and responsive to the objectives stated within the Temescal Basin GSP. The Temescal GSA, through the Temescal Basin GSP, identified specific management actions and 3 projects to achieve the sustainability goal. So what happens next? Once you approve the Temescal Basin GSP and we submit to DWR, we still have a lot of work to do. The GSP outlines projects and management actions that will be completed in the next few years in order to maintain sustainability by 2042. Official adoption of the Temescal GSP initiates plan implementation. Once submitted, the first action item will be working on the first annual report due to DWR by April 1st, 2022. The Temescal GSA is required to submit an annual report to DWR by April 1st of each year following adoption of the GSP. The Temescal GSA will continue to update the Temescal Basin groundwater website with any new information. This concludes my presentation, and I am available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who didn't read the 800 pages? Everybody did, so
I read them.
Kevin, we'll start with you. Catherine? Robin? Ted?
I do.
Good.
Because I'm not going to let her get off that easy. And I know we don't buy any water from there, but I also, just so there is a connection with Norco, because I sit on the 2nd district for the flood control, and that is in our basin. And I'm glad that you're doing the recharge. That was part of our, when we initially met in December, when we talked about projects, is the sustainability of the basin and recharging the basin and kind of holding on to that water and runoff so that we do recharge our. It's very important. We can't let the water keep going to the ocean. It doesn't help anybody any good. So I'm glad we do this. And so it is important. That's when we were approving our projects, is that we look for those retention of the water sources. We only get it once. Once it falls, it's gone. So, and then the other thing, are you guys utilizing any Proposition 1 money?
Ooh. I will have to get back to you.
Those are state funds. And the reason I say that is because currently through our SAPA and OWA board, again, I'm sitting on an OWA because of this water thing, we just put out the requirements on that Proposition 1 money for round 2. And I suggest that you look through that. If you don't know Ian over at OWA, please get a hold of it. It's One Water, One Watershed on the SAPA, and see if any of this, I'm trying to help you out get some money because it's state money. It's Proposition 1 money. See if that falls through there. You're all in our Santa Ana River water basin, so you're all in the basin, so you may be available unless you know if you are.
Okay.
The DWR had grant funds.
Correct. Those who's out of
available for preparation of GSPs, and Corona was awarded a grant.
Good.
For preparation of the GSP. There will be future grant opportunities for implementation of GSPs, and we'll be looking at those. Those will be through Prop 1 and Prop 68.
Good. I just don't want you to forget about it because it's there.
Yeah,
and in our area, we have quite a bit in our area that's allocated from all the way from San Bernardino to Orange County. So just remember that as you go through in your process.
Will do.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a
Thank you.
question.
Go ahead, Kevin.
So will this affect, there's quite a few wells in Norco, will this in any way affect those wells?
So the answer is no, because the wells sit outside of the Temescal Basin boundary.
So the ones in Norco are outside?
They're
Okay.
outside of if we go to, the second page shows you the Temescal Basin boundary, and the city of Norco wells sit outside of this boundary.
Worked with the city to evaluate the city's well locations, and those definitely are not within the Temescal Basin. There may be private wells that we're unaware of.
That's what I mean.
That are within the Temescal Basin and the city of Norco. We did speak to and go looking for wells, speak to landowners, and we're looking for wells. We didn't find any private wells that were within the Temescal Basin area. There are no restrictions on pumping within the GSP, so those private wells wouldn't be affected. We have attempted to establish the thresholds for sustainability in such a way that they won't affect private domestic well pumping in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Okay, let's go ahead and open the public hearing.
I have no public speaker cards on this item, Mayor.
Thank you, Dana. I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council for discussion and action.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimous.
Thank you very much for your report. Appreciate your time. Okay, moving right along. Item 6C. Ordinance number 1079, first reading, amending the Norco Municipal Code, Title 10. Chad?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is our, I think, a third attempt since 2020 on this topic, so I think we're well versed in it, but we'll give a brief history on this item. So back in 2020, we recognized and developed that there wasn't an official adoption of any of the parking restrictions and standards that we had in the city in the various locations. There wasn't one thing that adopted them or identified them, how they were created, where they should be, what the limits are, etc. So we went through the city, added all the locations, created a map and maps that show what the various restrictions are, where they're at. We looked at those restrictions at a staff level and then at Streets and Trails Commission. We even reviewed those at the EDAC Commission to determine which ones were appropriate as is, which ones maybe needed to be tweaked. We modified some of the weight restrictions. That was one of the recommendations from Stuck, to change it from 10,000 pounds to 12,500 because of some of the larger trucks that Norconians use. That way those trucks don't fall beyond that limit. And added extra no parking along certain trail segments where there's simply just not enough width. That way we add signage that simply makes it known to folks that you can't park along a 2-foot shoulder and have more of your car in the roadway. And try to make sure we codify those. We put them basically on a written index that shows that identifies the limits in writing, but also maps that show where those limits are on the street, on which side of the road, so that we had a really fundamental and functional repository of what our current restrictions are and why, especially if there's any discussions in court about whether or not this restriction has been legally adopted in a process. So this will really codify and manage that. Plus we did a process to where we are adopting the new ordinance that talks about the parking restrictions and identifies this process, but also creates a resolution process to where in the future, if we want to do any future modifications to any section or area, we can do it by resolution rather than having to do it through a formal public hearing. And it's easier to change that, and we can keep updating our repository of information that'll be kept by staff and the clerk. So if there's ever any questions, we can identify the latest version of that and where all our restrictions are. So that was the overall goal. We did have one healthy discussion over the last year and a half that's gone back and forth, and that's in regards to Hamner Avenue. And that's primarily the biggest topic of discussion folks have had. And just for rehash for the public, the only approved legal parking restriction or in that back in the 70s, Hamner Avenue was made all no parking at any time. And then eventually in the 2000s, it was changed to 1 hour parking in the auto mall zone between 2nd and 3rd. That got modified a little bit between Auto Mall Way and 3rd Street because of a request by one of the car owners to remove it because they were getting some ADA compliance issues from some interested attorneys that wanted to challenge whether or not they had the necessary sidewalk improvements to allow access for ADA. So the thought was remove them so they didn't have that fear, because there's no parking, there's no need for it. So between 2nd Street and Auto Center Way, that was removed, but it's still in place between those two locations of 3rd Street and Auto Center Way. But we did identify there's a few sections in there that have 1 hour parking that were never formally adopted. So that's what we brought forth to council to discuss those, whether or not they should be formally adopted to allow those parkings to exist, or should we make modifications as a whole to do no parking anytime on all of Hamner. In staff's discussions at every level, our recommendation has been to do no parking anytime, to make it consistent and fair to everybody, that, you know, why certain areas should get parking and areas shouldn't. Because we've had requests from other businesses that are not related to the auto mall to get parking on the street, and we simply inform them that the code doesn't allow it, plus the as far as there's no parking on Hamner in most sections, plus the municipal code also requires that you have sufficient on-site parking for your customers and for your employees. So there really isn't a need to have on-site parking on the street unless you have some sort of hardship that you could demonstrate, which even then we don't have criteria to even evaluate. So we need to create a criteria if we wanted to evaluate those case by case. So staff's recommendation in relation to that has always been for public safety purposes, because you do get a blind spot when a lot of these cars are parking next to the edge of the driveway. You've got to creep out farther to get in to see traffic. It's a higher speed road, so we felt in that regard that safety. For aesthetics, simply it looks cleaner and nicer, as far as especially to be able to see the products that are in many of these areas, including the all-mall zone. You're not blocked your view of seeing some of the things that they're advertising by having large trucks or vehicles that are parked there all day long. And then the obviously other one was just really fairness of how we apply it. But that got a lot of healthy discussion. Like I said, we had the council asked to go back to talk to EDAC and get their thoughts on it. They were split on the issue in desiring to support businesses, but at the same time, they also felt there was some safety issues and there wasn't necessarily a need for it, since other businesses have to have on-site parking. Some of the IDOC members felt it was unfair to those who don't get it. So they were pretty split on that. Stuck has gone back a couple different times. Originally, they were in favor of doing it. What we ended up suggesting was perhaps to alleviate the issue of people needing to make deliveries, drop off things, whatever it might be. Certainly, especially in the auto mall zone, a lot of the trucks will either park along the roadway or they even park in the middle of the suicide lane, as we call it, the median, painted median, to drop off cars and vehicles, etc. But that doesn't work for every business. Sometimes, that doesn't work for them. So we recommended in the last iteration of this with the council in December was to do, and what Stuck voted for unanimously to do would be no parking of all of Hamner except loading and unloading, so that people can show up, delivery trucks, even residents coming up to drop something off, etc., for a nominal time frame could come and deliver something or pick something up. Ultimately, that originally was approved by council, then it was asked to revisit it again. We went back again to Stuck to review that recently. We did advertise that discussion, and we've advertised it each time we've gone out so the property owners know about it. We did have one property owner show up, which is from Norco Trailers, to give his opinion about the removal of no parking and the impacts on that. And through that discussion, the Stuck elected to come up with a recommendation, which was basically allowing parking for any entity that either sells cars, motorcycles, boats, RVs, anything that basically is registered with the DMV, to allow them to ask for 1 hour parking if they want it. They'd be provided it if there was enough parking on that particular side of the street, meaning the road width was enough. Because there's some areas, certain auto places don't have enough that wouldn't be allowed to have that. And that would be the criteria we would use if that would occur. And that was a 4-1 vote for doing that. And we reviewed that recommendation with the city attorney, who had indicated, and I put it in your staff report, that recommendation is problematic because it's very narrow and it could be challenged because of the fact that it's because of that narrowness and excludes others, and there's no definable criteria related to public safety or health that would justify it. So staff continued with our recommendation as far as what you have in your staff report. We want to recognize what Stuck recommended, and we had that in your staff report. That we're still recommending the original recommendation, which again, for me in implementation of that and dealing with any request, it's the one, again, it's about public safety for me. It's fairness and how it's implemented. But in the end, what we're simply looking for, and I explained this to Stuck, is that Public Works is, we don't gain one way or the other whether or not there's parking or not. It's just being consistent in how we can explain to one person who comes to the counter what they can or can't have. And this is that ambiguity, because there are places that are approved or have signage, but they need to be either officially approved and added, and I can say, well, they were approved and this is when it happened, etc. Or there's a process simply that council elected to remove that, but you can deliver things, you can park there briefly, because we are getting in certain areas parking all day where it's not 1 hour parking, and certainly sheriff's got much more important things to do than doing parking patrol for 1 hour parking and those abuses, but related to speeding and other things that are going on. So doing that as far as making no parking except for unloading and unloading, we feel that that's a pretty appropriate. In talking with sheriff, again, they're not going to be questioning if somebody's parked on the road, whether they're been there all day or not. They're assuming they're delivering something because they're going to do the other stuff. Unless they get a formal complaint from a business that somebody's been there all day, they're not looking for that. So if somebody was come by and parked and they were there, happened to be an hour or even two, sheriff is unlikely to deal with it unless there's a formal complaint. But in the end, I'm just looking for the council to make a determination finally in one way or the other what you would like us to do. So because this obviously impacts the overall ordinance, which takes care of all of the parking restrictions and gets them in place, that allows me to start all the signage in every location across town to make sure we're improving all that notification, including no parking along the trails, in the trails, no motorized vehicles. This formally adopts all those other areas, including Hamner. So in regards to Hamner and that issue, ultimately I'd like you to decide something for that so that we can move forward on everything and not move this down the road for a fourth time. I do want to identify there was one more street by Stuck that they asked to review and consider for no parking, and that was Western between 2nd and Parkridge. Is fairly narrow. It's like a 24-foot road. So I did add that in your map and description. That makes it no parking on both sides of the road. Several of the folks had said they're driving down there, it's literally one lane when you have both people parking on the side. So we did elect to add that. So that is in your map and in the index. We did add that section. We already dealt with the other one that was on 2nd Street about adding parking between Parkridge and Western on that north side, so that's been eliminated there. So we dealt with that one resident's concern that had that concern before. I think we covered everything at this point. Got a wrap up to the present date. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Chad. We'll now go into council questions of staff, and if I may, I'd like to start with one question first.
Yes, sir.
In the most recent Streets and Trails Commission meeting that you had, was there any discussion about right-of-way? How lack of, in certain businesses where there's the lack of full width right-of-way, how that impacts adjacent businesses or businesses in the vicinity?
There was a comment made by the property owner that he felt that the parking restriction, he understands what we're trying to do and would be fine if it went away, but wanted it to wait until after the adjacent property was fully developed, meaning the curb and gutter was put in. And that's a property this is Norco Trailers, that's the property to the south. As you know, the city's already done the roadway improvements there, minus doing the formal curb and gutter. The property owner for that south area parks perpendicular. They have a couple parking spots and they have some in the back, but none of that parking impacts the roadway, physical roadway. But that was a comment that the property owner offered that indicated that he just felt that it shouldn't occur until that property develops. I don't pretend to claim to understand the rationale. I don't mean to disparage the comment. It's not like there's a property that's sticking out and somehow is impacting traffic flow in the area or not. So I don't know the overall thinking of that. There's certainly many other properties along Hamner.
And that's kind of where I was
that pop out.
going, was down by the motorcycle Norco Awards, and then of course infamously Fifth and Hamner.
Right. Yeah, like on the award shop, again, that's their physical legal property because they didn't and haven't dedicated to the city. It's basically, we did all the improvements in the roadway, so it's functional, but they legally can park perpendicular because their property extends actually beyond the legal alignment of where the sidewalk would have gone if they dedicated the property to us. And similar, same thing, if we go farther down, there's properties that actually that are physically out in the roadway just past the, I think it's Jiffy Lube. Like that one sticks out quite a bit, and that obviously would get developed when it ever develops, it would be widened out. But yes, there was a brief comment by the business owner. We really didn't go down that track too far. As far as trying to figure out the rationale for that, as far as to not have it or have it, we focused really on, do you have enough on-site parking for your businesses or residents, not residents, your customers and your employees, and what the issues are that are justifying that need. And I think, and he expressed some of those concerns of having some homeless folks in the back, potentially scaring or making their employees nervous, so they'd rather park in the front. And that issue's there. And so I think the general idea though was, in as far as stuff's concerned, and they expressed from the dais, was because no one came before, they assumed it was a non-issue. But when the gentleman with Norco Trail came, they wanted to try to generally support, if he felt it was a need, that they did that. It's just the mechanism they tried to come up with really is very narrow, and that was the concern of the city attorney. But so that's kind of where it went, and that's general discussions. But like I said, I don't pretend to understand the issue of whether something's developed next to you or not.
Yeah, I was more of what other discussion with other businesses. So, thank you for that. Council, questions of staff? Robin? Ted?
Can you hear this?
We will. Catherine? Kevin? Okay. Go ahead and open the public hearing.
We have one speaker card, Linda Dixon.
Hi, Linda. How you feeling?
Okay.
Good.
Like everybody else.
Yeah.
Good evening. I'll just make this brief. You've heard it before. We were business owners for over 45 years. We had businesses in Belmont Shore, Seal Beach, and Los Alamitos. I have never, ever heard a city come to a business person with such an outrageous plan. This shouldn't even be on the agenda. Hamner's not consistent. It's not a consistent street. Once you do your work, once you get the street widened, once you get your curbs and gutters in, then this might be a topic of discussion, but it certainly isn't right now. And it's very apparent that whoever wrote this up has never owned a business. This type of idea, I would think, comes out of left-wing Sacramento, not Norco. We do not want to run our businesses out of town. We want to encourage businesses, and all you're doing is putting handcuffs on a business that will prohibit them from making a living. And once something like this comes to light in a business community, you're going to have one heck of a time getting the businesses and the type of businesses that you want to come into this community. And you want to make this nice for everybody. It's just like the little snowflake game. Everybody gets a participation ribbon, and life is not that way. That street is not that way. You have got to put first things first, get your priorities straight, and then perhaps come back with a plan such as this. But this is absolutely asinine. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
I have no further comments.
Okay. Close public comments. Bring it back for council discussion and action. Ted?
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I certainly agree with you on Hamner Avenue, and especially the area between 3rd and 4th. As I look at this, I am pretty much in favor of most of this ordinance and the parking restrictions done in town. I think you and your staff, along with the Streets and Trails Commission, along with EDAC, did a good job in figuring this out. The one area that I do have issues with is between 3rd and 4th. We have unimproved Hamner that sits on the east side between 3rd and, if you do a pro-elongation of Lambton Lane all the way to California Awards, as you go across the street, that's where our issue is. Because you mentioned earlier, Mr. Morgan isn't going to sell that property. He's not going to do it. He's just, I know the man. He's not going to do it. You'll have to get it out of the grave for him. So it's just, that's the nature of this area, and that's essentially the problem we have. The area on the other side between 4th and 5th, as you go up where you have the big dirt and unimprovement, that's going to be an issue, but there's no side parking there anyway. And I understand the ability to stay consistent on Hamner Avenue as far as that. It helps out the enforcement, helps out the Sheriff's Department personnel and the traffic study. And I understand that. Everybody wants to see consistency. You put no parking all the way through. You had earlier talked about 1970, no parking, and you were correct. And the reason being, prior to the freeway, that was State Route 30, and they didn't want people parking. The state controlled it then. That's why there was no parking along there until the interstate was done. Then it came back to us. So that's a little history on that one. Once it was no longer a state highway, no more state funds, it opened up, so the city took over it. When we look at that and we look at the businesses there, and I'm all for all your parking restrictions except for the area on Hamner Avenue between 3rd and, again, California Awards or Lambton Lane on the east side, is that I would like to see us stay that 1 hour in that area. And you already said that we'll get the resolution passed, and then we can update it. Once that improvements are made along that area, then we can revisit this and see where we're going to be. But we need those improvements done so that we can stay consistent. And that's my feeling on it, is that I support most of this except for that section, and I'd like to see us retain that 1 hour parking until those improvements are done. That's my 2 cents worth, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ted. Robin?
For me, I think it's about it's about consistency across the board. And since this issue has come up before us, I have been a little more observant of the parking in that area, and how long vehicles are there and all that kind of stuff. I think the compromise of having it loading and unloading is good. Again, it's gone to stuck twice, EDAC. And as far as the developed and undeveloped, my personal opinion is if this is in place, then those going in when it is developed, the standards are there. It's not something that's going to be, after the fact. And I just think about, the frustration for me on Hamner's 5th and Hamner, and hoping I don't pop a tire, if I'm not paying exactly attention when I'm trying to go through there. So, I just think having something written down, consistent and enforceable, and a policy that people know this is what it is good. Leaving stuff ambiguous because that's the way we did it in Norco forever isn't the reason why we should keep something that way moving forward. So that's my frame of reference on this particular discussion.
Thank you, Robin. And Catherine?
I'm interested to hear my colleagues' comments. I drive Hamner regularly, and I don't really have a problem with, and I haven't heard of any problems with parking on Hamner. We had the one business that came into Stuck, and then Stuck kind of tailored their recommendation based on what that business wanted, but it's not something that is really reasonable or realistic. I think that the compromise of allowing loading and unloading also satisfies that as well. So I was hoping that there would be some businesses here, because I would really want to hear from them in looking to meet their needs. So I'm interested to hear what my other colleagues think.
Kevin?
It's so hard right now to do business. If you look around at other cities, keep hearing from our governor how great everything is, and there's this big surplus, and the reality is every third business is empty. And so for me, because the Hamner in that area, particularly the area that Ted pointed out, and along Hamner, it's like a jagged edge. It's undeveloped, and I know we want to impose things on that, but people have done business in the way that they can do business in probably the most difficult time since the Great Depression. And businesses come and go. I mean, in the best of times, if you can last 5 years, you're doing great. And right now, it's just not a good time to do business. State of California is trying to put most of us out of business, and that's just a fact. And so I personally think that if a business owner stands at the podium and tells me they need something to do business, until that street is totally improved, I'm going to support that business owner, because ultimately that's where all the money comes from. And I think we forget that. There's an old saying that the person that signs the back of a check doesn't know what it takes for the person who signs the front of a check to make the money. They don't even know where the money comes from. So I personally will not vote for anything that, now if other business owners were to come in here, well, I'd probably support them too, but they didn't show up. And one of the critical components of our government is people need to stand at the podium and say their piece, and I'm going to respect that piece. So for me, the area that we're a Norco trailer, and I totally understand the problem with the next door neighbor, and he says that's what he needs. And in the future, if we get off the dime and actually fix the street, well, then we'll make the change then. We'll figure it out. But right now, I don't want to, even if I don't think they're telling the truth, and I'm not saying they're not saying the truth, but if that person stands there and says, I need this, I'm going to do everything I can to fulfill that need. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Trying to think in my mind how to put this all together. So, Chad, you had mentioned in your report there was an auto dealer that was concerned about parking and handicap access.
Correct.
Was that on the east side of Hamner or the west side?
West side.
On the west side. And they did not want parking.
Correct.
Okay. So, to what Kevin had mentioned, I'm trying to remember if I have this correct, with Kathy Azevedo and a previous Public Works director fighting out on the street at 2nd and Hamner about, I'm putting up a sign, no you're not, okay? physically out there. And that is what it is, but it's kind of what Kevin's saying. It's kind of the Norco way to protect our residents and protect our businesses. And to me, there's some validity with that, outside of the entertainment value if you were driving by at the time. North of 4th, the undeveloped land, we will acquire that right away. When those parcels are all developed, there'll be a dedication of right away. So that's kind of a given when that development happens. But I do appreciate what you're trying to do with, let's have this standard, okay? And everything's consistent. But I think we have to also be fluid with it and realize that that section outside of 5th and Hamner, from 3rd to Lambton Lane and maybe all the way up to 4th, we should address this when we have the consistency of the right-of-ways. And that when we acquire those dedications, so we get rid of those impediments. That's kind of the way I'm leaning to do this, but whatever it is at the end of this meeting, I'd like to see us resolve this in some manner so that staff can move forward with the direction. Absolutely.
So then I have a question, if I'm hearing my colleagues correctly. And so I think this might be a call-in question. With this being the first reading, can we adopt everything but leave the 1 hour parking from, let's say, 3rd to Lambton Lane? Because I'll just tell you right now, I wouldn't support going all the way to 4th Street with it. But from 3rd to Lambton Lane, can that amendment be made prior to this so that it can be done? It can be done right now, right?
It has to be done now.
But I'm asking, can it be done, that amendment?
You can make any changes
Okay.
you want, and that's why I want to emphasize, however you want to creatively try to support, like I said, the businesses in that aspect, and coming up with that idea, and then I would just be looking for Colin whether he thinks it's appropriate, But like I said, you could make that suggestion of supporting the only amendment would be modifying the parking to allow the existing 1 hour parking, let's say, that's already exists between 3rd Street and, let's say, Lambton Lane. So it would only involve 2 properties, which would be North Auto Center and Norco Trailers, because the homes in between that's currently already flagged as no parking, as an example. And we would just reflect that on the map so that by the second reading, the description is in there, the update is in there on the maps that reflects that. If that's your intent, you want to leave the 1 hour parking, and the assumption is you'd want to do the no parking, unloading and unloading the rest of the way. So absolutely, we can make any modifications, but that would be done today so that it's officially part of the second reading, and we have it in there for that.
Okay, and then because of the way this is written, resolution-based moving forward, should those improvements take place, then the council at that time can just do a resolution to change it very easily at that time, correct?
Correct. Or if,
Okay.
like Councilman Bash talked about, if a business comes forth and they want or are seeking assistance to have parking, they would we'd bring this back to council to have that discussion because they're making a request. Because staff can't approve it at our level. It would always come back to the council, whether it's a one individual request or a group request. That can be looked at as an individual basis of whether that should happen.
Okay, then I move to make an amendment, if that's okay. Yeah. Be under discussion of a motion as well.
Sorry. Just to note that with staff that we've sent out 3 or 4 public notices to all the business owners.
Correct.
On Hamner.
3 so far in the whole process, yes.
Right, 3 times. And 1 response?
one response twice
Okay.
for the same property owner.
Okay.
All right, then I'm going to move to make an amendment to ordinance number 1079 to leave the east side of Hamner from 3rd to Lambton Lane as 1 hour parking.
Second.
So just to clarify, that means all of those properties along that section will now have 1 hour parking, including the residential home. Was that your
Unless
intent?
otherwise posted.
Unless otherwise posted, yeah, the way it is right now.
The way it is now.
The way it
I
is
can
now.
modify that so it just identifies those two businesses as being
Correct.
allowed to have 1 hour parking.
Correct.
Gotcha. You want to, I don't know, I assume,
Well, we have a motion and a second.
Have to go back and vote again on the original.
Yeah.
with the amendments
Right,
in
correct.
there, yes.
But we have to vote on the amendment.
Right.
Regular party.
From my understanding, there was an amended motion, and was there a second on the amended motion?
Yes.
Okay. The amended motion, I believe, is on the floor. Would you like me to read the title of the ordinance?
Yes.
Ordinance number 1079. This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Norco, California, amending Norco Municipal Code Title 10, Vehicles and Traffic, to add Chapter 10.06, Parking Restrictions, Code Amendment 2022-01.
Thank you.
Just to clarify before you vote, so that would mean in this process, for the existing that's still on that roadway, we would remove the 1 hour parking that's in front of Cowgirl Cafe and the associated auto center, the little one that's just south of that. Just so you're aware, in case you get some calls, that's what that would do.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dana. You guys are going to all leave before the good part. Item number 7, City Council Staff Communications. Does any staff have any comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Not seeing any? Chad?
I just wanted to say thanks for all this support on the action items. We have several projects that are going to go out for construction very quickly in relation to Norconian and the other streets that were approved tonight. So we'll definitely see a lot of road work getting started. There's still other projects that are in the queue and in bidding right now that will be coming back to you probably that first meeting in February or the second meeting. So we're definitely getting a lot of street projects out, and hopefully in the next 3 months we'll start getting the storm drain projects finally out. But again, a lot of work being done, and I do appreciate your support on those projects.
Hillside Avenue between 5th and 6th. There was a little lag, but what's the status of that today?
They have started basically removing the roadway. They started on the north side of that near 6th Street and started pulling out the 12 to 10 inches of section out of there. Started just grinding it out and continually do that. They'll make sure that they maintain the driveway approaches for all the residents to get in and out through that process. They fixed some of the issues that were causing some of the confusion for the residents in regards to what they had done out there. They originally staked a lot of their stakes in the middle of the trail, and people were thinking that's the new road edge, which it wasn't. That was an offset. So we asked them, please go out and fix that, because it's creating a lot of confusion. So now it's relieved some of that, but now they're keeping busy. They're making sure they're communicating with the residents on all the issues, especially about access. So so far this week's gone pretty smooth compared to the prior.
Time of completion on this, do you recall?
It's going to be probably, with everything, it'll probably be mid-March.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
It's quite a bit of work. It's complete redo of the street, really deep section, curb and gutter. So it's quite a bit of work, but it'll
Absolutely.
really turn out well. Plus there's some storm drain improvement that we're doing in that process.
Good. Thank you. City Attorney.
Comments, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you, Colin. See you too. Thanks. City Manager, Andy. Okay. Ted? Already did. Got to pay attention here, buddy. Let's go. Your microphone.
I want to thank Andy and the city staff for sending Todd to the League of Equestrian Facilities so he can get it updated and training on that. I kind of snuck in their website, and there is our man. He's out there kicking the dirt around, kicking the sand. Look, in Texas, learning how to do things right. So that's a big improvement, and that for him, and I know he's going in there and probably eye-opening to see what actually goes on to make the arenas better. And so I appreciate that we fund that program for him. And I know, just real quick, because I see Justin sitting back there, did we get a tally on the number of DUIs or citations we had in our last little thing we did over the weekend? Okay, I'll look. I must have missed that, but I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, all right, I'll take a look. I know that it was just a roving patrol, and over the Martin Luther King weekend, so I appreciate that. Thank you. I'll look it up.
Thank you, Ted. Robin?
Only announcement I have is there's a critical blood shortage right now, so if you have the time and means to be able to do so, please donate blood.
Catherine?
What's it say, Jeff? Oh, close the meeting on all.
Oh, absolutely.
Shane Porter. He's already on top of it.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay, thank you. I have no other comments, but sad that we lost one of our good friends, Shane Porter. Just seems strange, we just saw him a few weeks ago at Brian's retirement, and I think all I can say is that well, first I'd ask the chief. Chief, would you like to make any comments about your colleague? Please come to the podium.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to me, Captain Porter. I worked for Shane when I was a young firefighter, when he was an engineer at Home Gardens and then Lake Hills. So I don't think I need to share. Shane and his whole family, they're just great people. Retired a full 30-year careers with CAL FIRE, running hand crews right out of Norco campus, which is one of the most physically demanding jobs in our outfit. And then to see Shane back as a volunteer, I got to spend, more time with him. He'd stop by the station, have coffee. He loved what he did, working with all of you up at Ingalls Event Center, but he's going to be missed. I can't emphasize that enough. The family has, along with the Fire Service has a memorial planned for January 29th at Nellie Weaver Hall. So that'll circulate, but everybody's invited, and let's show the family some love and appreciation. I think they'd be happy to see all of you, and all of you, of course. But thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Chief. I'd like to just have a moment of silence before we close the meeting. We're adjourned.